Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. I hope you guys are doing well this morning. Yeah, the lighting looks okay. Wherever you are in the world, if you are under the sound of this voice, you have my deepest appreciation for being so. Um, it is Wednesday, December, what is this, 10th. We are steamrolling to Christmas 1 minute at a time. It takes forever to get to Christmas. I guess I got to be honest, I'm looking forward to the vacation. This will be the first vacation that I've taken in the last year since the radio station has fundamentally collapsed. So, that being said, there's still right much news afoot. Donald Trump's interview has been making the headlines. He has been bashing Europe relentlessly, saying it's a decaying entity, complaining about immigration, saying that Europe is going to change into something else. And with various degenerate attacks on Marjorie Taylor Greene in one sense. I don't know if that appeared in that particular interview, but he was going after her pretty hard. But also the mayor of London, who just so happens to be Muslim. That said, it seems that the United States issue with a lot of this is Europe may change, and it may change into something that is no longer completely and entirely subservient to U.S. interests. So there's that. The irony of this is that Trump seemingly is making this point that he wants Europe to be more independent, which, you can't have it both ways, right? The national security strategy, I find to be super interesting. And I know a lot of people are taking this. There seems to be two strands of thought with this plan. And I think one strand of thought is effectively missing. In one sense, you have people saying, well, this strategy document is Wolfowitz reimagined. This is just the Wolfowitz doctrine, but it's, let's say, changed and altered slightly to try to accomplish the same objectives, but to do so on the cheap, effectively empire on the cheap. We need to find ways. The United States is $37 trillion in debt. When the big beautiful bill passes, that debt is going to skyrocket even higher. We can't afford to maintain empire in a way that empire has been operating. So we need to find a way to maintain primacy without necessarily footing the bill and finding ourselves all across the planet in the process of doing so. And so that one strand of thought is, well, the U.S. is trying to do this on the cheap. They're effectively pushing what we consider to be allies into positions to take over many of the responsibilities that the United States itself was taking over, with the idea that the U.S. will be effectively behind the scenes, pushing and cajoling, going after what we consider to be enemies. The other strand of thought is almost the complete opposite of that, and that the U.S. is retreating from the world. I think I saw one post saying the U.S. capitulates to Russia and China, and that we are effectively retrenching in our hemisphere. Under this model, this sounds great for Russia, China, Iran, etc., but you would imagine this is utterly disastrous for the countries in South America. This idea that the United States should have some kind of control over these sovereign nations is outrageous. The other strand I want to add to this that I haven't heard too much about is that regardless of which of these are true, the strand of thought in both is that the U.S. is a decaying empire. Meaning, if you initially start with the premise that we have God-given power and authority to control the globe using our military force to do so, and we can intervene anywhere in any particular part of the globe that we want to, and we can do this in perpetuity. And then somewhere along the way, you realize, hey, that's not true. That's a scale back. That's an acknowledgement that this power, quote unquote, that you thought you had wasn't the power that you actually had. And maybe you did have it at one point. You don't have it now. That is on some level a recognition and an acknowledgement that your skills, capability, authority, competence, all of these things have degraded to such a degree where you have to effectively scale back. And kind of like the Romans, who decided we need to pull the barbarians into the military because we can't ourselves do it ourselves. This is effectively what the U.S. is doing. We are pushing other countries to effectively do the job that we thought we ourselves could effectively do. And this document, whether true, false, whether it changes anything or not, is on some level a tangible acknowledgement that the premise was false. I see my guest in the background. I want to bring him in. I don't want to keep him waiting. We are joined with one of my favorites, Dr. Wilmer Leon. How you doing, man? You doing okay this morning?
Man, good morning, my brother. How are you? I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, and I pray you are doing as well, at least, and hopefully better.
I'm doing okay. I am
Come on, man, you just
tired. I'm getting tired. That's all. But I'm doing okay. Dr. Wilmer Leon, he's a radio host, political scientist, nationally syndicated columnist, host of Connecting the Dots on YouTube, Inside the Issues on Sirius Radio. You are the person I want to talk to. You are a student of history. You have read more books than I can. I'm not going to say than I can count. Obviously, I can count better.
I've read more books than the average bear.
You've read more. Thank you. That's a better way to put it. I couldn't figure out how to finish that sentence. So thank you for that.
I've read more books than the average bear.
And you're a student of U.S. history in a very sincere and learned way. What do you make of this national security strategy document? I mean, granted, whether the document comes into effect in real terms or not is kind of besides the point. It's the fact that Eldridge Colby effectively sat down and wrote this document that is getting a huge amount of press in a sense of what this document means. And people have come away with different assessments for it. But it seems to be turning the Wolfowitz doctrine, if not on its head, at the very least, putting a spin to it. But give me your take on this.
It's difficult to assess for me because there's other than so-called Make America Great Again, which is really a trope. There's no real consistent guiding ideology. So it seems to start from a so-called strategy, because when you look at section 1, I think it starts with strategy, but strategy without a goal or an ideology is, to me, somewhat reckless. It says to me, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will get you there. It is a retrenchment from dominating Europe. It seems to reflect a shift in focus away from Europe to the Americas. It seems to be Monroe Doctrine redux. It reflects, I believe, a transactional Donald Trump. No overarching worldview. In fact, during his Politico interview, he says, when asked about, I think the question was either, the question was about Europe, and he just basically said, I don't really care. I don't really care about Europe. And then the first part of the sentence was, I don't really care about Europe. And then he comes back and says, but I want Europe to be strong. When the State of the Union comes up in the second semester of the school year, I tell my students, watch the State of the Union, and I said, pay attention to these types of speeches at different times in the speech. Speak to different audiences, and so sometimes you'll hear what seems to be inconsistency in the speech. I said, but because there are different audiences being spoken to at different times of the speech. That is a strategic creation. This, though, seems to be not a strategic creation. This really just seems to be a lack of focus, a lack of guiding ideology. Again, to which Donald Trump admits, I don't really, I don't know that. So I don't know if that gives you an answer, but
no, it does.
okay.
I guess I took it as the U.S. wants to maintain primacy. And
I'm sorry, U.S. I didn't hear you. Wants to
maintain primacy.
Oh, absolutely.
And the way that it's recognizing that, okay, $37 trillion in debt. We have a fracturing political structure that can no longer supply the needs of the population. So how do we do this in this new context? And it seems that the way they decided was using allies. So we want Europe to be stronger. We're going to push Israel to deal with the Middle East. We're going to push the Philippines, South Korea, et cetera, effectively to take over operations of throwing them at China. That's the way I took it.
It's an aging boxer.
Yes.
In fact, it's an old boxer. It's Mike Tyson deciding he wants to regain his title. Unfortunately, he doesn't have and I'm just using that name. This is not a accusation against Mike Tyson, because he can still whip people on an airplane.
Yes, you can.
No, but I mean, so pick an aging fighter who decides that he wants to regain his title, but he doesn't hire a trainer. And so he just kind of does what he's used to doing, not realizing that those strategies don't work anymore because the body has changed, because
right.
the competition has changed. All we really seem to have now is the dollar. And that is on the wane. So instead of realizing I need now to get along with my adversaries, that I need to change my mindset. So here it is. So that we haven't realized we can no longer control the game, but we can influence the outcome. That, I think, is the piece that we're missing.
Yeah.
If we work with our adversaries, I even think we don't need to think of China as an enemy. We don't need to think about Russia as an enemy. We don't need to think about Iran as an enemy. We need to think of them as adversaries. And if we did that, and again, started to understand, I can't control the game anymore. And I'll put it on a very personal level. My son is 23 years old. I can no longer, he no longer technically lives in the house. He's moved out. I can't tell him what to do anymore.
Yeah.
But I can call him and I can say, hey, son, have you thought about? Hey, son, you might want to think about. Oh, Dad, appreciate that. I'll tell you, so I can still manage him, but I can't control him anymore.
Yeah, you can influence, but power is different.
Right. Listen to also because if you've seen my son, he weighs about 245 pounds.
Oh, he's a big guy.
If I try to put my hands on him, he'll snap me in half. That's a great metaphor, because there was a time, as with the, and please forgive, I use fountain pens. I got ink on my hands. I don't want people to think my fingers are falling off. I got gangrene
or something like that. It's like, oh, what's wrong with Wilmer?
Gang blue. because I use fountain pens. Anyway, but that's not just that's a great metaphor, because there was a time when he and I both were younger and he was smaller, that I could apply force and it would work. Can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And I've realized I can't do that anymore. So I've got to change my strategy.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
This is Joint Chief of Staff. Listen to what he says, because I think this lines up with what Hegseth mentioned at one point, saying, hey, we need our allies to effectively die for the temerity or the integrity of the United States. But listen to what this guy says, because I think this is what that document boils down to.
Eyes of the Chinese military. What our goal in the joint force is to create multiple simultaneous dilemmas for all of the adversaries around the world, so that they are very cautious and concerned about doing something that would bring any sense of threat to the American people. And so
I find these people to be just insane.
Yes.
Like I'm even shocked that they have like wives and procreating, for God's sake. The idea that somebody is trying to storm the American beaches, it's just nonsense. But the point that he makes, though, is we are trying to create multiple points of threats for various quote unquote adversaries around the globe. So yeah, we want to use South Korea, we want to use Japan, we want to use what's the other country, the Philippines, to go after China and create threats for China. We want to use Europe to create threats for Russia. We want to use Israel to create threats for Iran. Basically, but we personally don't want to put boots on the ground because we realize that's expensive.
We are projecting, and we are projecting against countries and cultures that have been in the game so much longer than we have, that they can see it coming a mile away. Gil Scott-Heron said, America, the international Jekyll and Hyde, the land of 1,000 disguises. It sneaks up on you, but rarely surprises. So we think we're going to bait China into a conflict. If that were going to work, we'd be fighting over Taiwan right now. We think we can bait Russia into a conflict. Russia entered Ukraine when Russia was ready to enter Ukraine. Remember, back in April, I think it was, before, I guess I was 22, whenever this thing started, 22, Ukraine sent about 80,000 troops to the Ukraine-Russian border. And Putin, because the United States thought, Joe Biden thought that he could bait Russia into a response. What was the response? Putin picked up the phone and called Joe Biden and said, look, buddy, you don't want none of this. My response will be asymmetrical and disproportionate. I suggest you remove those troops from my border. And Joe Biden picked up the phone, called Zelensky and said, back that thing up. We're not fooling anybody. We're not scaring anybody. And this, yeah, the Gerald R. Ford is the biggest aircraft carrier in the world. So what? We're now overweight. The dynamics of warfare have shifted. The game has changed. We don't wear leather helmets in football anymore. I don't care how big you are. Even the pads have gotten smaller in football. The game has changed. And Hypersonic missiles are a game changer. That nuclear powered missile that can fly forever. From what they tell me, it can fly forever. And it's a cruise missile. It can just circumnavigate the Earth. We don't have any of that. The submarine game has changed. We can't match the Chinese submarines. We can't match the Russian submarines. The game has changed. We're using muskets now. We're using, since Ken Burns just came out with the Civil War, with the Revolutionary War deal. We're using muskets once again.
Yeah. You mentioned the Politico interview, and some of the, put it this way, it's an interesting interview. He bashes Europe, like relentlessly bashes Europe. In fact, let's go to the Europe part. So this is, let me see, 12:45. All right, this is when he is talking about Europe, and granted, the questioner is baiting him a little bit on this in order to kind of pull him out. But this is not all that much different than what he was saying in the document, that Europe's population is changing. They brought so many people in. What's ironic about this is that part of the reason that so many Syrians came into Europe in the first place, if you remember, was because the United States was effectively overthrowing the Syrian government.
Exactly.
And when those people fled, they fled into Europe. And I remember this picture. You will remember this. Angela Merkel being asked by this child, effectively, "Hey, why won't you let more of us into your country?" Angela Merkel was like, "We can't take any more of you." Right. And it was so bad politically, she let another million into the country. Like, this wasn't just random when Syrians just started running into Europe. This is the interviewer asking Trump about his take on Europe. I'm going to play this clip.
Because he allows nobody in his country. And Poland has done a very good job in that respect too. But most European nations, they're decaying. They're decaying.
You can imagine some leaders in Europe are a little freaked out by what your posture is, and European.
No, they should be freaked out by what they're doing to their countries. They're destroying their countries.
Well, European Council
President. And they're people I like. Look, they're people I like. I get along with them. You know that. But they can't let this happen. And it gets to a point where you can't really correct it. There'll be a point, and it's very close to that point.
And what will that mean?
It will mean that they're no longer going to be strong nations.
Does that mean they won't be allies
Or
anymore?
they'll be, well, it depends, It depends. They'll change their ideology, obviously, because the people coming in have a totally different ideology. But it's going to make them much weaker. They'll be much weaker, and they'll be much different.
And what will that mean?
They'll be much weaker. They'll be much different. They're going to change their ideologies. They're decaying as countries. No, they are decaying. I don't know if it's for the immigration reason, but they are decaying.
That's the white supremacist replacement theory. The immigrants are going to come in, and the immigrants are going to change your ideology. The immigrants are going. That's the white supremacy. There are so many things in what he said when you start to peel back the onion or the layers on the veneer, because he's also totally disassociated from cause and effect. To your point, the Syrians didn't just wake up and say, "Hey, let's go to Europe."
Right.
Folks in El Salvador, folks in Nicaragua, folks in Honduras, they didn't just wake up and say, "Hey, I got an idea. Let's go to the United States." Right. No. There's a cause and effect here. Things don't happen in a vacuum. And to your point, the Syrians went to Europe because they were forced to go to Europe by the actions of the United States. People don't just pick up and decide to move to another and risk life and limb. I don't know how far it is from Syria to Germany.
What, 14-hour, 15-hour flight? 20 hours?
How many of those people flew?
I have
Versus,
no idea. Well, there's that, right?
Versus trains, planes, and automobiles. I mean,
Yeah.
he's so disassociated. And see, I don't know if that's a psychotic. I don't know if he's just Donnie Dum Dum, or is he really psychologically? I guess I need to call Dr. Bandy Lee and ask her, give me your analysis of this guy. Is he psychotic, or is he just stupid?
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's not rhetorical. I'm not licensed to make that kind of assessment, but I do see and hear the white supremacist replacement theory in his rhetoric, and this total did you mention the blowing up of the Nord Stream pipeline? Who blew that up and why? What impact did that have on the deindustrialization of Europe? What impact did the United States action as it relates to, when Gilligan and the skipper went out and blew up the Nord Stream pipeline? What impact did that have on this whole dynamic shift in the politics of Europe?
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't come up. That doesn't come up.
No.
It's like Europe is becoming weaker because of the immigrants. Missing the fact that the deindustrialization came as a direct result of them not being able to use Russian oil for the pressure that the U.S. was putting on them in the context of the war. It's like that is completely ignored. None of that stuff is taken into consideration.
Right.
Here's another one where he's like, I think they're weak. I think they're weak. Basically, Europe, from Trump's point of view, is just a liability, which on some level they are, but let's be honest on how they got to be that liability.
Sir, it's sometimes hard to tell when you say these things. Do you intend to send kind of a message of tough love to our allies to push them to make reforms? Or do you think that many of them are just weak and you don't really want to be allies with them?
I think they're weak, but I also think that they want to be so politically correct. I think they don't know what to do. Europe doesn't know what to do. They don't know what to do on trade either. I mean, I look at a lot of the trade, situation that's going on over there. It's a little bit dangerous, but Europe, they want to be politically correct, and it makes them weak. That's what makes them weak.
It sounds like you want to.
God, there's so much into this. Give me your take on that. Before I say anything.
Well, I was just making a note. Europe doesn't know what to do. That's true. That's true, because the relationship between Europe and the United States is changing dramatically. And so when you come post World War II, and the United States sees how much money it can make through the military industrial complex, and the United States decides it's going to be the policeman of the world. Well, if France and if Germany and if Greece and if Italy, if they don't have to pay to build a military and maintain a military, if Sweden and Denmark don't have to take 60 or 70% of their gross domestic product and invest that money into a military, then they can pay for free education. They can pay for free health care. They can pay for retirement at the age of 62. And they can have good retirement benefits. They can have great unemployment benefits. They can do all of those things. They can afford all of those things. But now what we find happening in Europe is neoliberalism. The policies of neoliberalism are now making their way into Europe the same way that they've devastated the American cannibalized, that's the word I was looking for, cannibalized the American economy. So now all of a sudden, what do they want to do in France? They want to extend the retirement age to 67, which in the United States, we're like, well, come on, so what? But for them, oh man, that's a dynamic shift in one's quality of life. Oh, now all of a sudden we want to cut back on unemployment. We want to cut back on, in Europe, you're off the month of August. You're on vacation the month of, try getting something from Europe in August. You gotta, nobody's home. They're all on vacation. But that's changing. So, and it's changing because now France is talking about what? We have to defend ourselves. Britain, we have to defend ourselves. Germany, we have to defend ourselves. But they really seem to be focused in the wrong direction. Russia isn't trying to take over Europe. The United States is.
There, also he mentions trade, and he's like, they don't know what to do on trade.
Oh, trade, right.
Europe has the European Union, which is effectively a trade organization.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing fine on trade. The issue with trade for the most part of Europe is, well, they're under the thumb of the United States.
Right.
And so trading with China or some of these other things are kind of off the table because they're under the thumb of the United States. And let's be honest, what Donald Trump wants is to be able to sell his, quote, big, beautiful pigs into Europe and sell products into Europe that the European Union just doesn't allow. Right. Like I tell people all the time, when I was in Europe, I lost weight. You walk more. The servings are less. The food is better because it's not that it tastes better per se. It's that the quality is better.
It does taste better.
It depends on on where you are.
All right. Okay.
Like if you're getting the sausage.
Your food in England is horrible.
Yeah, that's my point, right? It depends on where you are. If you're in Germany and you're getting a sausage, agreed. If you're in Poland, you're getting a sausage, agreed.
Right. If you're in England getting a banger,
less. Yeah, less so.
Less so. And I'm a big sausage guy, so I got you.
But the quality of it is better.
Yes.
Like what they allow in it is different. I mean, even RFK Jr., if you remember when he came out, he pointed out that there are all of these products that are, quote unquote, generally assumed to be safe, that in some of these things in Europe cause cancer. They're just not allowed. And so Donald Trump is like, hey, we need our products into Europe. And so when he's talking about trade, he's talking about effectively breaking up the European Union in the context of allowing American products in the country. So let's be honest, right? This is not about.
And to your point, remember during the Bush administration, when Europe decided they weren't going to allow, genetically modified beef?
Yes.
Into Europe, into France. It was France, I think, was the first country that said, we're not allowing American genetically modified beef into our country. And George W., he got all upset and got his shorts all in a bunch and said, well, then we're not going to buy your Roquefort cheese. Who would buy Roquefort cheese anyway? But that's a whole nother conversation. And so the price of Roquefort cheese went up like 1,000%, because they said that we don't want to put those chemicals in our bodies.
Yes. Yeah. That's there's so much into what is being said here in regards to going after Europe. And mind you, this is after Europe accepted the tariffs. This is after they accepted this humiliating deal where they're supposed to be paying billions of dollars into weapon systems and everything else that are bought from the United States. Weapons we don't have, with money they don't have, that yet they're supposed to be buying. And with him bashing them all along the way, saying that they're effectively paying for the Ukraine war. Like it's amazing the amount of trash that they take. And yet they stay there nonetheless. They stay there. In the context of Ukraine, this was another interesting comment by Trump on this. Because, Trump once before said Ukraine is effectively a dictatorship. And people was like, whoa. And then he backed away from the comment.
And this is a proxy war.
Yes.
Marco Rubio said
it's
a dictatorship and that this is a proxy war.
Listen to what he says here on this one.
To hold an election.
Is it time for Ukraine to hold an election, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. It's been a long time. It's hasn't been doing particularly well. Yeah, I think it's time. I think it's an important time to hold an election. They're using war not to hold an election, but I would think the Ukrainian people would, should have that choice, and maybe Zelensky would win. I don't know who would win, but they haven't had an election in a long time. They talk about a democracy, but it gets to a point where it's not a democracy anymore.
He's right. He's right. Give me your thoughts.
Well, it's not a democracy now. The United States overthrew the democracy in 2014.
Right.
It hasn't been a democracy in, what's that? I don't know,
decades.
14 years.
Yeah, decades.
They haven't had an election in 3 years. It's not a democracy now. See, Hegseth, this was a different context, but the point is still valid. Hegseth talked about the fog of war. This is not the fog of war. It's the fog of lies. So now the language is so corrupt and corrupted that it doesn't make sense anymore. What I took away from that part of the conversation is Donald Trump saying subtly or not so subtly, depending on how you want to look at it, Volodymyr, pack your bags, son. You're done.
Time to go. Yeah.
Play the game. Your flight leaves, and you better be on it, because
it's like tap man on shoulder. Did a good job, son.
Hey, but because it's gonna wind up like Sal in The Godfather. Hey, Mike, can you help me out for old time's sake? I mean, not Mike, Tom. Hey, Tom, can you help me out for old time's sake? Sorry, Sally, can't help you. And he just turns around and they put his ass in the car, and you never see Sal again. So when the conversation started about the theft, the corruption, right? A couple weeks ago, we started hearing about corruption in the Zelensky government, as though they've just uncovered this.
Yes.
The elephant hasn't been in the room. The elephant has been at the dining room table throughout the entire meal. Yep. And all of a sudden, while we're sipping coffee at the end, wait a minute, there's an elephant in my dining room. So that was the first sign. Volodymyr, I hope you have stolen enough money, because we're starting at your support group, but we're coming after you.
Right.
Now, Donald Trump wants to talk about elections and democracy, and the language has become so corrupt. The language is corrupt that you can't make sense out of anything that they say. Well, there's not a democracy. Really? There's not a democracy when you overthrew. Thank you, Victoria Nuland, for coming in and overthrowing. It was called the Maidan coup. they don't want to talk about that.
No, well, you can't talk about that because that creates complications, right? But I think what's clear in this is what you mentioned. You played a good game, son. You played a good game. That leg looks bad though.
As Tom Porter has said for a number, my dear friend Tom says, the problem, and he usually says this in the context of us as African Americans, but it applies here as well. The problem is, once you learn how to play the game, then you got to learn how the game gets played.
Yes. Yeah. There's a difference in those things. Yeah. Yeah. It seems that Zelensky is out. You're not the only one who made that point of saying he is on his way out, whether he realizes it or not. I think Wilkerson put it in military terms of a 13-cent solution, or you take a flight. And I think he added to that, well, I think the cost of a bullet has gone up to be $1. So in fact, a $1 solution.
Right.
Or you take that flight to Israel and you call it a day.
You surprisingly come down with a bad case of lead poisoning.
Yes. 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 He doesn't seem to be taking that hint.
No.
And if you notice, he was in London, I think it was yesterday, with all of these other Walking Dead Europeans who are as popular as, mold in their own countries. And he seems to be taking it from them of like, hey, I know Trump is saying bad things about you, but don't worry about it. It's okay. Just keep going. I don't think this is going to work out for him.
And see, what I think is missing in that analysis, you're absolutely right. And so when I say what is missing, I don't mean on your end, on Zelensky's end. On Zelensky's end is the Europeans, because they have put so much stock in Ukraine, because they have spent so much time perpetuating the lie and convincing their own citizens about this mythology of Trump, of Putin wanting to take over Russia, and we have to sacrifice and we have to dump all of this money into military expenditures, because they've invested so much into that lie. They can't now just turn to their people and say, oh, oops, my bad.
Yeah.
Sorry, homie. I misjudged that one. So to a certain degree, as far as Macron is concerned, and what's his name in France, Merz,
yeah,
in Germany, so far as they're concerned, as goes Zelensky, so go they. So they need him there. You must fight on so that we can continue this lie. Because once he goes, the whole thing implodes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they can't afford. They know they're throwing good money after bad. They know they're sinking money into a dry well. But for them, in their mind, they don't have an option.
There's a ceasefire, and Russia's already said they're not going to accept a ceasefire, but there's an ending of the war. Yeah, they should. I mean, at this point, if you look at the battlefield, it's clear, even by what's media standards.
No, you back up. Angela Merkel has already admitted, we lied to you in Minsk 1, and we lied to you. I'm sorry, we lied to you in Minsk 1, and we lied to you in Minsk 2. So why would Russia buy that lie a third time?
Agreed.
And see, that's this again, the language is so corrupt. So and the language is corrupt by commission, in terms of what they're saying, and by omission in terms of what they're not saying. So why would he? He says, no, I'm not going to sign on to a ceasefire for two reasons. One, you lied to me about this twice. And two, now we get to your point. I am winning on the battlefield. Basically, this thing is over. And why would I, he's not, see, I guess they think he's Chuck Schumer. I guess that they're confusing Vladimir Putin and Chuck Schumer. You were winning, Chuck, on the subsidy issue before Thanksgiving. You were winning, and you threw in the towel. Vladimir Putin's a little smarter than that. Why would I now go for a ceasefire when I've won?
Do you think that a U.S. president, I've asked this question for a few people, and I get different answers anytime I ask this question. Do you think that a U.S. president can even accept terms from Russia in this way? I mean, because obviously they're not going to accept anything that doesn't deal with their core demands associated with this. So the regions are ours, no Ukraine and NATO, the sanctions and those type of things are probably going to be added into it, saying these need to go. If Odessa may be added into this, especially if the war continues for much longer, like meaning they're getting to the point where the Ukrainian military is buckling, and you can see it in the number of desertions. You can even see it in the territory that the Russia is taking that at a faster and faster pace. It seems that Trump seems to know this. I suspect the Europeans know this, considering their own media is reporting this. But I get the sense that from the U.S., the real driver in this is the humiliation of Ukraine just utterly and completely collapsing on the battlefield, which is why Trump is trying to get some kind of deal. The 20-point peace plan is nonsense. But obviously, the further this goes on, the worse this gets for Ukraine. Is it possible for a U.S. president, given all of the pressures of
No, this has nothing to do with Ukraine.
Yeah.
It has everything to do with the United States saving face.
Yes.
Ukraine is a proxy. If we put it in the context of prostitution, Ukraine is a hoe. And the United States has been the pimp. And the pimp don't give a damn about the hoe, because there are more hoes out there. So no, what Donald Trump is, and to a great degree, you and I are saying pretty much the same thing, but I think there's just a slight nuance to my point. And that is what, and I can't even put it in the context of Donald Trump, because I think Donald Trump is not the causation, he's the culmination. He's just the one sitting there now. Kamala Harris would have found herself in the same circumstance, but worse or more worser, because she would have tried to escalate against Russia, which would have made the whole damn thing exponentially worse. But the point being, the United States is trying to extricate itself from the Ukraine and is trying to find a face-saving way to do it. They cannot fathom, they cannot stomach, they cannot comprehend another Afghanistan. They can't have imagery of the U.S.-backed Ukraine decimated on the battlefield. Not when you have the head of the Joint Chiefs standing there saying, oh, we're going to start a fight here so we can scare China here. We're going to start a fight there so we... Ain't nobody scared of you, man. You don't have no game. Nobody is whoever that general is, general, whoever you are, nobody is afraid of you anymore. You got a military, yeah, you got a nuclear, yeah, but China has nukes, Israel has nukes, India has nukes, Pakistan. You got no game, homie. So they're trying to find a face-saving way out of this. And see, this is where, in my opinion, this is where the narrative of Putin is a jerk, Putin is a dictator, Putin is changing the terms. No, he's been nothing but consistent from day one. The issue is he's not what's the word?
Capitulating.
Capitulating.
Buckling.
Thank you. That's the word. He's
Yeah.
not capitulating. Donald Trump picks up the phone and says, hey Vad, can you get me out of this thing, please? What does Sal say to Tom? Can you help me out, Tom, for old time's sake? And Tom says, sorry, Sally, can't help you. That's what Trump is saying that's what Putin is saying to Trump. Sorry, Donnie Dum Dum, can't help you. I won. You will cry uncle, or the noogies will continue.
Yeah. Can the U.S. president accept the deal that Russia is effectively demanding in this case?
They're going to have to. It's just a matter of, with the noogies, how much brain damage are you willing to incur or endure before you finally cry uncle? There's no win here. It's over. And what is all Putin is saying, I'm going to continue to insert foot in ass until you say enough. Am I wrong?
Oh, no, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And
You're not wrong at all.
And see, and I've mentioned her name a couple of times over the last few days, and I'm not picking on her, but I watched Simone Sanders on MS, whatever it is,
Right, MSDNC.
talk about
Yeah.
Putin is we have to prevent Putin from taking over. Will you please stop telling that lie? Please, baby, please, baby, please stop telling that lie. So that this thing can end. Russia won. You picked the fight with the wrong people. And you got your ass kicked. As you did in Vietnam. As you did in Afghanistan. As you did against Iran a couple months ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. The
Just tell
Democrats.
truth.
Well, the Democrats seem to be all in. And it was their president that effectively initiated and backed this to the hilt. They don't seem to be able to back away from it.
And Kamala Harris was going to double down on the same dumb.
Yes.
I know a lot of folks don't want to hear that. But, what did Michelle? Oh, America isn't ready for a woman president. Well, did you look at the popular vote when Hillary Clinton ran against Donald Trump? Did you realize that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote against Donald Trump? If America isn't ready for a woman president, why did Hillary win the popular vote against Donald Trump?
Right.
That math isn't hard to do. I think it was 48% to 46%.
It was close. Yeah, most of the votes came out of California. I forget the exact number, but it was like 3 million votes came out of California.
I don't care if the votes came from the moon. She won.
Right.
When you tell me America is not ready for a woman president, that forces me to ask the question, then why did Hillary Clinton win the popular vote against, was it 16? Against Donald Trump in 2016? If you can square that circle, then I will concede the point. But until you can answer that question for me, then I think that point is misleading. And then you want to tell me, oh, well, America isn't ready for a black female president. Then why did Barack Obama win twice? Now, I know he's not a black woman, but he is a black man. So if you take a black man won twice and a woman won the popular vote once, now I would tend to think Kamala ran a lousy campaign, taking pages from Hillary Clinton's lousy campaign playbook. That to me makes more sense than America just isn't ready for a woman president.
Yeah,
I know I went off point there, but
you're fine. She ran as Joe Biden. I mean, if you remember, she wouldn't pull herself away from anything that Joe Biden was effectively doing. Ukraine was
and
just
she
one
supports
of the
genocide.
And she supported genocide. Yep.
It's a losing formula. Losing
for her,
formula.
it definitely was. It definitely was. I mean, if you remember, Donald Trump, he was lying about it, but he was like, "I'm going to get peace in Gaza."
Right. But he was
lying
speaking like Henry Kissinger. A piece of Gaza, a piece of Angola, a piece of Namibia. That's what he was. That's the piece he was talking about. Again, Gil Scott Heron.
And by the way, Trump agrees with you on foot and ass. This is the last clip that I play from this interview, where she asked him about Russia's position. If you remember, Zelensky came back and said, "Hey, these terms are worse." Yeah, because your position is effectively falling apart.
For 4 years, I watched.
Yes,
your team has been going back and forth between Putin and Zelensky with various drafts of a peace deal. Which country right now is in the stronger negotiating position?
Dumb question.
Well, there can be no question about it. It's Russia. It's a much bigger country. It's a war that should have never happened. Frankly, it wouldn't have happened if I were president, and it didn't happen for 4 years. I watched that taking place, and I said, wow, they're going to cause some problems here. And it started, and it could have evolved into World War III, frankly. I think it's probably not going to be happening now. I think if I weren't president, you could have had World War III. I think you would have had a much bigger problem than you have right now. But right now, it's a big problem. It's a big problem for Europe, and they're not handling it well.
He's right.
He's right.
Because as you say, Harris would have escalated.
He's right on that point. And folks, even a blind squirrel can find a nut in the forest sometimes. A broken clock is right twice a day. Now, do you trust the clock? No. But
right.
No. Right. No. This watch works. All day.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to wear a broken watch and try to get to work on time based on a broken watch, but a broken watch is right twice a day. And Donald Trump is right on that point.
Yeah. Yes, he is. Dr. Wilmer Leon, man, I always appreciate these conversations. Thank you for this.
And
Thank you for this. Dr. Wilmer Leon, he's a radio host, political scientist, nationally syndicated columnist, host of Connecting the Dots on YouTube and Inside the Issues on Sirius. You be safe and you have a really good day.
Oh, and let me just, if I can, Ray McGovern's going to join me today on Connecting the Dots from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern.
Badass. Ray is a good guy. He's a really good guy.
Great guy.
Be safe, man. Thank you for this.
All right. Out.
Bye-bye. And I see my other great guest in the background, the one, the only, the man himself, Ted Rall, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist. How you doing, Ted? You doing okay this morning?
I'm doing great, Jamal. How are you doing?
I am doing all right. And just to finish it off, he is host of TMI with the great, the one and only Manila Chan. He is also on Deprogram with John Kiriakou at 9 o'clock. Ted, it's always good to hear from you, man.
Likewise.
One of the things I'm interested in is this seemingly split in MAGA, which is very weird. Donald Trump, in his interview, went after Marjorie Taylor Greene pretty heavily and even gave this deranged post where he's like calling her Marjorie traitor Greene and all of this other stuff. Does this damage his brand? I mean, because any way you look at it, Marjorie Taylor Greene, for the most part, has exemplified this idea of, quote, make America great. And regardless of some of the out there stuff, she's been very clear on this idea that the United States should be sovereign. We shouldn't have Israel dictating our policy. We should be doing something about healthcare, as opposed to people paying 3-4 times as much for their healthcare costs. Like, meaning she has gone after her party in ways that, yeah, might have been an annoyance. But a lot of the stuff also went after Trump, especially with the Epstein stuff. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I have the clip of him going after her. And it just seems so outlandish and so deranged. Give me your take on it before I pull up the clip, though.
Yeah, I got to push back on that.
Please.
Personally, I'm highly sympathetic to late period MTG. I think she's saying a lot of things that a lot of people agree with, me included. That said, Donald Trump's brand is that he insists on personal loyalty above everything and all else. He also claims to have invented the whole idea of MAGA. We can those of us who are familiar with history know that's not true, but in the modern era, he has branded it for himself. He literally trademarked the hat and the motto and the logo. So he's basically he's saying MAGA is whatever I say it is. If someone pushes back as hard as MTG did, he has to crush her like a bug. That's not about her. It's about keeping or the schism of the party. It's about maintaining control and terrifying anyone else who might dare to challenge him. He's Mao Zedong of this movement, and no one can challenge the chairman. Chrissy Hynde used to say, "The Pretenders is just whoever I hire to be in the band." Those of us who loved the early Pretenders beg to differ, but but basically that's how he's doing this. This is a management issue for him. He probably, if you and I and people like us, we're interested in ideology, we're interested in principles, we're interested in political ideas. Donald Trump's not interested in those things. Donald Trump is interested first and I'm not saying he's not interested in them at all, but he's not interested in them primarily. Primarily, I think his whole thesis is, if I'm not in charge, then what is the point of MAGA, right? Like, I don't want to play if I can't be in charge. So I want to run this game, and I'm the president and CEO of MAGA Incorporated. That's what this is about. She got out of line. She talked out of turn. Everything she said is right from a MAGA perspective, and everything he said telling her that she's a traitor, but not to MAGA. She's a traitor to him. But but of course he's trying to conflate those two things. I don't even know that it's unwise. I think I probably would be the first, as an advisor to the president, to say, you can't tolerate that. You can't let it pass.
See, I agree with you and I disagree with you. I agree with you on your premise that for all intents and purposes, Donald Trump is looking at MAGA as his thing. But I think you would agree with me. All power bases, all people who are in a particular position are there because of power base underlying them that puts them in a position, meaning nobody is a thing unto themselves. Any random country that you go to, they don't have this kind of absolute power. There are people under them that allow them to be in the position and to give them that power base for them to be in that position. You can fracture your movement. And if he's going after Tucker, after Nick Fuentes, after Marjorie Taylor Greene, after add in particular other person. And part of the movement looks at what those people are saying is, well, yeah, we shouldn't be in Ukraine. Trump said he was going to get out of Ukraine. Well, why isn't he releasing the Epstein list? Why isn't he doing, why are we subservient to Israel? That looks bad. And I would put to you that part of the reason that Donald Trump is like 30 points underwater currently is stuff like that. Meaning, I get that he's attacking her and he feels the need to attack her because he feels the need to somehow control this quote unquote movement, as he calls it. But the people that make that movement, what that movement is, and the people who are actually attending to the positions that Donald Trump claimed that he had when he was running in the race, this seems to create a fracture. And I think you're seeing that. And it's polling.
I'm going to just push back a little bit. You're right.
Please.
There's a fracture in MAGA. And what we're seeing is an absolute representation. These are symptoms of those fractures, right? The fact that these people are articulating positions that, you're right, that basically indicate that there's a sizable percentage of the American public, including those who voted for Donald Trump, who believe that he's lost his way and is no longer putting America first. And these people, like Nick Fuentes, are articulating that. So I think that, but from Trump's point of view, this is not unlike Hitler's Night of the Long Knives, right? Where he killed the leadership of the SA and then abolished the SA and folded them into the proper German army. The SA brought the brown shirts. They brought Hitler to power. I mean, they were loyal. They went to their deaths in the middle of the night, executed, shouting "Heil Hitler." They loved Nazism. They weren't disloyal. There was, however, a fracture within Nazism where Hitler in power had to behave differently than Hitler as campaigner, which is of course always true about all politicians. And Donald Trump is no different here. He has felt compelled to behave differently in power than he did as a campaigner. I think that if I was an advisor to Nick Fuentes, I would have said, listen, you can't, I know you're a creature of social media because of your generation, but if you want to stay inside the tent, you're going to have to go to the president personally or his close advisors and articulate these concerns behind closed doors. You can't do it in public. If you I'm the same way.
That's not his job.
Jamal,
that's not his job.
If you had a problem with me politically, I'd be like, Jamal, pick up the phone. You have my number. It's like if you fuck with me on Twitter, I'm gonna be pissed. I mean, it's like that, right?
But that's not Nick's job. Meaning the president is a position. Put it this way: if you said something where you went off the rails and you started, I don't know, I got into the big back and forth with Ritter, right? And it was public and it was on air and everything else. And a lot of it came because he came on my show. And when he came on the show, the people on my channel were like, what the F is wrong with him? What's going on with him? What's going on with him? Which means at that point, it's no longer private, right? At that point, it becomes public just by definition of the person being on your show and that stuff being aired out on the show.
Sure.
If it was something that you said where I thought Ted is totally gone off the rails,
right,
I would probably just pick up the phone and call Ted Rall.
I'm sure you would. I believe that.
But if you were president of the United States,
concerned about you for some reason, it's like, oh my God, he's off somehow. I'd be like, JT, are you all right? I'd check in.
But if you're president and you went off the rails, and my name is Nick Fuentes, and my brand, meaning the same brand that Trump is trying to protect, Nick Fuentes is also trying to protect his brand. It's kind of like Alex Jones. Alex Jones sounds like a maniac because Alex Jones is stuck in this weird thing of, obviously, the president is not maintaining what the president has said. And yet I'm Alex Jones. I have a brand that I'm supposed to protect.
Right.
Okay, how do you dance between these raindrops? Nick Fuentes did the honest thing in his context and just went after him.
Right. And I don't blame Nick Fuentes. Look, Nick be Nick, but Don be Don. And Don's not going to like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's all. I mean, I don't know if Nick has a way to get to the president or to someone close to him. I don't know if he can pick up the phone and talk to, I don't know, someone like Bannon, some kind of interlocutor. But the point is that if he can't do that, I could understand the frustration. Look, I'm a traitor to the establishment left, right? I mean, I've criticized the Democratic Party from the left for years. So am I likely to get a call from the DNC to come in and hang out and get some eggnog? Probably not, right? So I made my choice. Which was I put my ideology first, but that means I've burned bridges. That's what happened to MTG. She just said she knew she's not stupid, although we used to think she was, but she's not. And she obviously decided, okay, she knew she was going to burn this bridge. She just didn't care. She'd seen and had enough, and she was like, okay, I'm just gonna scream because someone's got to do it. Because if we keep it inside the tent, nothing's gonna change. This president's gonna keep sucking up to Israel. He's gonna keep, he's gonna be obsessed with the Ukrainians, and meanwhile, he's gonna go and do things like he did yesterday, speaking in Pennsylvania, telling everyone the economy is good. Donald, what are you doing? Really, just don't do that. I mean, that's how Joe Biden lost. That's how, or would have. I mean, Joe Biden / Harris. I mean, in a
Yep.
way, Harris was just Biden, and they lost that because they were trying to tell everyone that they were fine. Politicians always do that, and the ones who do that always lose.
I don't get the sense he cares since he's not running again at this point. I mean, granted, he's going to trash the Republican Party, but I don't get the sense that he personally cares, especially with the healthcare thing. They asked him about that.
Oh, that's a good.
And
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, because Trump's response, I thought I had this clip. His response effectively was, well, that's not my issue. Obamacare sucks. That's not my fault. And I want more money into people's pockets. And then he turned around and blamed the healthcare, the insurance companies, saying the insurance companies made a huge amount of money off of Obamacare. Okay,
True.
that part's true, but that has nothing to do with.
It's neither here.
effective-
Well, it's like if only you had a very powerful job and only you had control of all three branches of government and you had the ability to come up with an alternative plan, let's just say.
Right here.
And if only you had
This is-
promised to do that many years ago.
This is his response when asked
22
about
million
healthcare.
Americans are expected to see their healthcare insurance premiums start to rise by the beginning of next year.
Because Obamacare is so bad.
Yes, well, sure, because the Obamacare subsidies are expiring. Are you
That's
going to do
because
any,
Obamacare is so bad.
what is the Republican plan? Are you going to let that happen on your watch?
What I'm going to do is, if the Democrats go along with it, which they don't want to because they want to make the insurance companies very rich, okay? I want the money to be paid to the people to go out and buy their own health care instead of paying to the insurance companies, their stock has gone up 1,700% in a short period of time. Did you know that? 1,700. You wish your corn went up, right? But the insurance companies' stock has gone up by 1,700%, 1,800%. They're taking in trillions of dollars. I don't want to pay the insurance companies anything. And I know a lot of them, but they're owned by the Democrats. And the Democrats have, Obamacare is a setup to make insurance companies rich. And I want to pay the people, and I want the people to go out and buy their own health care. And that's what we want to do. And that's what the Republicans want to do.
I have no idea what that means.
I do. I
Please,
read the latest.
right.
I read the latest GOP proposal, which they announced late last night, and basically they've come up with. So you remember those healthcare accounts that you could open up privately, and
HSAs,
basically
yeah.
it's like a 401k. So in that you deposit like $1,000, and then it's not taxed from your income if you deposit, like you earn let's say you take $1,000 out of the money that you earned this year, you put in that amount is not subject to taxation. I'm not clear on whether it's subject to taxation when you withdraw it or not, but the point is it's tax-free, at least initially. And so basically it's a healthcare, they just revived healthcare savings accounts. That's all they did. And the amount is ridiculous. You can save up to the government will match you and give you up to $1,000 if
Are you
you're
serious?
a young adult, and $1,500 if you're over 57. Now, okay, my mother fell and broke her hip. She was in the hospital for 2 days. They fixed her hip, not including the repair to her hip. She paid $102,000. So I don't think $1,500 can be going too far. So I mean, all told, the hip thing was $1.2 million. For a broken hip, which, by the way, no one knows any old people. If you know any old people, you know someone who's broken their hip, right? So the point is that it happens every single day. So the Republicans don't have an idea. Everything that I always say Trump is great at diagnosing issues and problems. He really is. He's like the doctor who absolutely is like, you have this. He's right. Like he's wrong about the Democrats own the insurance companies. No, it's the insurance companies own the Democrats. But all the rest of everything he said is true. I would like to pay the insurance companies nothing. I'm on Team Luigi here. But the fact is that the solution to that is not this stupid healthcare savings account. I mean, first of all, it presupposes you have an extra whatever, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, $10,000 a year lying around, which most Americans, we all know, don't. So the vast majority of people really don't have savings. So that what you're gonna ask them to save more? It's ridiculous. It's like if people were awash in money, you might be able to do it. But honestly, even if you had people who were able to save $50,000 a year, really, how's that going to get them to that $1.2 million to pay for their hip? It's not. So the truth is, there are other solutions. Personally, I'm a socialist, so you know what I want. But I mean, there are free market solutions. I actually think you could abolish insurance companies and be better off, and just then the doctors would be competing against each other, and there would be new models of people who are just like, yeah, come and see me, $50, whatever. It wouldn't help everybody, but it would be better than what we have now. But the thing is that the truth is the Republicans aren't serious about healthcare. The Democrats also aren't serious about healthcare. Obamacare is not a serious plan. It literally, in 2 out of 3 counties in the United States, there's 0 or 1 healthcare plan in the so-called marketplace.
Wow.
So there's, of course, no insurance. Literally, by definition, there's no competition. And competition was the whole idea when the Heritage Foundation came up with this plan that became Romney Care, that became Obamacare. So it's just ridiculous. And but I mean, I don't know really kind of like who owns the Republicans when it comes to healthcare, but I suspect the healthcare insurers are also donating to them in almost equal amounts, if not exactly equal amounts.
Yeah, this is not serious. It's not. I mean, like if you had to go to the ER for anything, you're paying more than $1,000. Like I don't know who goes to the ER.
The ambulance ride alone.
Yeah, I don't know who's paying $1,000 for an ER visit.
Before they give you a Band-Aid or an aspirin, you're out $1,000. It's a joke.
And if they need an ultrasound, a CAT scan,
X-ray,
an X-ray, all of that stuff immediately just
some
takes
blood tests.
Blood tests takes you to the moon. If you go for alcohol poisoning.
I had a pea-sized lipoma, which is a little lump of fat, non-cancerous fat, right? Like people get them. You're just a little lump. And it's like I had it removed from my chest. $12,000. Okay.
That's outrageous.
And that's after insurance. I had to pay $12,000.
Yeah, that's outrageous.
I could have cut the thing out with an X-Acto blade myself and some brandy. I mean,
and by the way, even with Medicare pays 80%. Okay, 80% of, let's say, surgery.
$1.2 million.
Exactly. Meaning you still would have been out $120,000.
Yeah.
Who can afford that? Like the idea that they're saying we're going to get rid of.
But Jamal, did you see that poll that came out 2 weeks ago where it said that even people who earn over $200,000 a year are distressed financially? They're literally those people. Most people over $200,000 a year have availed themselves of those things, like on Amazon, like for a purchase under $100, I'll pay it in increments. I'm sorry, if you make over $200,000, I don't understand that. I've never made $200,000 a year. Maybe for like 1 year I did. And like the thing is that like I've always been okay if I made $100,000 a year, but like totally okay. Like paid all my bills, saved some money.
Yeah, comfortable.
Went on vacations, had a good time, bought some stuff. But anyway, but Americans are in deep trouble. And it's like, look, the Republicans are whistling past the graveyard in the midterms if they think that, because this is part of affordability. It's a subset of affordability, right? It's not just food. It's not just organic grapes. It's everything. It's college. It's transportation. It's hotels have gotten insane. Like, you want to take your kids on vacation or something. The movies. $27.50 for a normal movie ticket in New York City now. I mean, nobody goes, so there's that. But your cable bill is probably $200 a month. I mean, everything's expensive, and this is just. And the healthcare is one of those things, and it really sticks in people's craw because it's not their fault. Like, you don't have to go to the movies, but you do have to see a doctor.
Do you think there are going to be consequences for this? I mean, in the midterms, the Republicans are already seemingly.
And I think we already saw one yesterday with the special election for the mayor of Miami.
I saw that. That was the first time somebody won or a Democrat won in that region.
Yeah, and the Republicans are spinning and saying, well, Miami-Dade is a Democratic Party. Well, I mean, yeah, it used to be. In 2000 it sort of was, but it isn't now. And Ron DeSantis is the king of Florida, and he endorsed the Republican here. The Republicans had a good candidate. He wasn't a wanker by any means. And he was endorsed by DeSantis and Trump. Trump doesn't like to endorse anyone he thinks might not win because it makes him look bad. So he thought he was going to win. The lady, first woman to ever be mayor of Miami, she won by 60-40. I mean, that's a landslide. That's a washout. Yeah. So the message here is that first and foremost, Democrats are now dominating urban America with the Mamdani thing. I mean, basically, the urban America belongs to the Republicans. Have lost that for a generation or more. The question is how does this portend for next year? And if I'm the Republican strategist, I'm hoping that, as usual, the Democrats figure a way to fuck it up. But because basically you have two really miserably unpopular parties right now. But if you have to put your money on it, you have to say, well, when Americans are pissed, they vote against the party in power. So that's probably likely to happen next year.
Will it change anything?
No.
Which is the most frustrating thing in the world for me, right? Like, it's one thing if it's like we're voting and we're going to make a change. It's another thing where it's like we're voting out of anger.
Voting makes no difference. I mean, because what would have to happen, right? Let's just stipulate, right? Let's just say Democrats sweep they're going to take the House, but let's say they destroy the House, pick up 25 seats. Let's say they destroy the Senate. They're ahead by 5. Okay, big Democratic landslide like 1974, like 1982. 2010. Okay, no, not 2010, 2014. Okay, so let's say that all happens. What are the Democrats going to do? Do you think they're going to get together and say, like, oh my God, the people are really pissed. They want Medicare for all. Bernie, get over here. Let's get to work. Your blonde national nightmare is over. No, not at all. Not at all. They'll just be like, look, they love us. The American people chose us because they think we're adorable. We're so cute. They can't get enough of us. Don't change a thing. We're doing great. That's what they'll do. It's their nature, like the scorpion crossing the stream.
Yeah, it's like, how did you trust me on your back when I'm a scorpion, right? It's like, regardless of what I told you, I'm a scorpion. Yeah. But you would think that with something like this, with this much pressure on the healthcare issue, with this much focus on the healthcare issue, with Obamacare effectively failing and falling apart, that there would be some impetus to say, hey, maybe we need to fix this. Maybe we need to do something about this. Maybe we need to go further than this. Like, even for their own political gravitas, just for them to say, we actually did something. We put something on the scoreboard for you guys to actually say, hey, we did. Meaning,
right,
that you would think that there would be some, I don't know,
pride
to
be able to retire and say, back in 2026, I was part of the team who pushed through the blah blah act. Yeah.
Even out of self-interest. Not even because, oh my God, we care because these people are getting hit with healthcare costs.
For running for re-election, to be able to say, like,
yes,
Congressman Jamal Thomas passed the blah blah blah. You're like, yeah, re-elect Thomas. He cares about you. Yeah, that's what you'd want. But they're so
not so much.
Owned. And by the way, you're seeing so many, people like, MT. The big, meta story about someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene is that basically she went to Washington, she saw how the sausage was made, and it's the fucking jungle, and she did not like what she saw. And they all do that. I mean, we're seeing a lot of these kind of like, also from the left and from the right, where people are just sort of like, you go there, it's pointless. There's no way to change anything. And I agree with them. There is no, look, I was approached to run for Congress, And
Were you?
I thought, what would I?
You never
what-
told me that.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll tell you the story. It was Elliot Spitzer back when he was governor of New York.
Really?
And I lived on Long Island, and and so I thought about it. I mean, first of all, I was like very skeptical about the ability to raise the necessary $5 million, but I was like, I had a whole idea. Like my theory was the AOC theory. Like if you do really grassroots, you go literally, your goal is to hit every single constituent, knock on every single door in the entire district, right? Like that's your plan. Like you do that. That's what Jimmy Carter tried to do in 1974, 75, 76, and it kind of worked. But the point is that I chose not to pursue it because I thought, well, in reality, what do you do, right? You're one out of 435 douchebags, and and what do? You sit around at a bunch of boring fucking meetings, and do you ever get to do anything? No. And like, you know how I know this? Because there's only been one major piece of legislation that has done anything for the American people, done by the Democratic Party since the 60s. And it's a shitty piece of legislation, the one that we're talking about now, Obamacare. That's it. So I mean, I don't care literally about anything else Congress has done in all that time. More has come out of the regulatory agencies than come out of Congress. So, so the EPA has done more for the American people than Congress has. So I mean, I could see wanting to be part of that more.
So
And
what's
I
the
mean, I'm
point
just
of being on
thinking,
the
someone as political as me, I think a lot of people have the same thought that I do. They're just like, I'm not going to be involved in that mess.
It's like, what's the point? But what is the point of being a part of a football team if that's the case, right? I mean, you're one of many trying to accomplish an objective. You're trying to, well, I guess it's different, right? A football team actually is trying to accomplish an objective, and everybody knows.
A football team
Yeah.
might go to the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah. Also, their objective is clear. Like, it's not like somebody's on a football team and they're claiming that they're trying to get a touchdown. They're not trying to get a touchdown, right?
Right. Or like if we're going to go baseball, like everyone's shoeless Joe, right? Everyone's paid off.
Yeah.
That's not the.
Yeah, it's different. Bad analogy. God, man, that sucks, Ted. It would have been nice having Congressman Ted Rall from the great state of New York.
I would have been a big fucking disappointment. I mean, I would have had to either think about your choice, right? I mean, it's like a Sartrean choice. Congressman Ted Rall either has to call a press conference and blow it all up and say, everything's corrupt. Pelosi told me to do this and that, and I won't do it. And then I lose all my committee assignments, and no one will talk to me on Capitol Hill. I become Dean Phillips, right? I'm radioactive. So that's useless for my fucking constituents. Or I'm just like, the Democratic Party is fighting hard for all working class Americans, and I'm continue to pursue the leader's agenda. And we're but the Republicans are cock blocking us at every turn.
What about Thomas Massey?
Well,
he does that shit all the time.
Thomas Massey is radioactive, and he's not beloved by the leadership, right? I mean, he's blocked.
But do you need to be beloved by the leadership? Is it enough to be loved by the public, or not so much?
Well, it'll be good for your social media following, but you're not going to get anything done for your people. That's the problem. I mean,
yeah.
Where are those Epstein files? Still waiting.
Yeah, but he was able to get the discharge petition against the opposition of his own political party.
Yeah, no, it's very impressive what he managed to pull off. But nevertheless, where are the results?
Where are the fouls? Yeah, where are the fouls? Ted, man, I have enjoyed this conversation. I always enjoy these conversations. Thank you for this. You be safe. Ted Rall, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, host of TMI with the one and only Manila Chan. Also, the program with John Kiriakou. Ted, you be safe and have a good day, man.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jamal.
All right, Ted Rall. Shout out to Ted Rall. I see my guest in the background. How you doing, Arnaud? You doing okay this morning? Or this afternoon?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. How are you?
I am doing well. Glad that you can join me. I am super interested in your take in this conversation. Arnaud Develay, he's an author, political analyst, international lawyer, specializing in international criminal law. His book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of America's Political Consensus. we recently, so just for a little bit of background, the audience would know this, but I'll go over it anyway, just for any random person that comes across the video who's not a typical member of the audience. Subscribe if you're not, by the way. We've had many breakaway states to create the Sahel region, the AES, at this point. And this is Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. They have gotten much closer under the juntas that are running those countries. Now, many people don't like the fact that it's a junta, but many other people look at the point of saying African nationalism is necessary in order to regain sovereignty in regards to those countries. France hates this, obviously. And France at one point was even trying to get ECOWAS to attack those countries that try to put back the governments in power, despite the fact that the populations was completely against this. ECOWAS eventually backs down. Fast forward to a couple of days ago. Benin, which is also in West Africa, you get people going onto a radio station or television station, effectively saying, this is a coup. We've taken over the government. And ECOWAS, France, Nigeria. Nigeria apparently does air sorties. France is running reconnaissance missions. You get the other situation of ECOWAS apparently saying they're going to send troops into Benin, but at this point, Nigerian troops are in Benin. This is pretty wild. And the belief is that all of this stuff was effectively being directed by France. Give me your take on this. I mean, like, what's the, for one, is it being directed by France? Maybe let's start at the beginning.
Well, I think you summarized it pretty well. There is indeed this alliance of Sahelian state that exists since 2023, I believe now,
Yep.
although they all came into their own, quote unquote, going back to 2022. And what we need to keep in mind is that it's all about money. It's all about economic development. It's all about access to the sea. And Benin, not coincidentally enough, has access to the sea through its port in Cotonou.
Yes.
So all those states, whether it's AES or some of the states in ECOWAS, are also experiencing chronic confrontations with, we can surmise what are jihadist, well, should I say Western-sponsored jihadists,
Yes.
even more so in earnest since basically the Syrian project is completed now. So there were to be elections in Benin, and next thing you know, there's this coup headed by I think he's a Brigadier General Pascal Tigri, who initially had these cohorts claim that they control the situation, and that President, the incumbent Pascal, I think his name is Patrice Talon, was to be deposed. But as it turned out, that did not quite work out as was planned. And what's interestingly enough, and that's an important point here, we don't quite know the specificities of what happened, but a plane carrying about a dozen Nigerian soldiers, military personnel to be sure, seemed to have experienced technical problems, and they were forced to land in an airport in Burkina Faso, where they were promptly detained by the local authorities under the pretense, I mean, the argument, the pretext that they entered Burkina Faso's airspace without authorization. But all this to say that there's a lot that is not quite known yet. Will we know about the implications as to, who's sponsoring who's not, allowing this sponsoring to take place? We'll find out over time. But for the time being, all we have is pretty much what you described. And this pretty much stresses that and keeping in mind that Niger suffered counter coups, attempted counter coups the last couple of years. So the situation in that region is extremely fluid. The traditional former Western colonial powers do not see of a keen eye the breakaway of the AES, which threatens to evolve into somewhat of an outgrowth of a tumor. And yes, and so they're making sure that they nip in the what's the expression, in the bud, any kind of pretenses or pretension or aspiration for other countries, to leave the reservation essentially and join the AES. And so this is par for the course when we have two visions essentially emerging now. I mean, one that we've known since the 1960s and the colonial movement, and one that has been somewhat trying to exist for at least 40 years, but who has always been nipped in the bud back in those days. And speak essentially of people like Thomas Sankara and Patrick Lumumba, who were champions of Pan-Africanism, but which with the AES, Pan-Africanism, let me get it straight, is about to crystallize into something, a political administrative entity, a compact, as it were, with AES, which we can surmise as for ambitions to create an alternative road to self-development, to sovereignty, to renegotiating all the contracts, entered into at the time with France, mostly, but not only, in order to make sure that whatever revenues, dividends, benefits their own population. It's all about money, follow the money. And so, this is probably not the first, because as I said, Niger, experienced 2 attempted coups last couple of years. But it won't be the last either. I think we will see more and more of those, frictions between what is emerging as 2 blocks now within at least this particular region of Africa. And it's pretty much, the what I would say about that sequence. But again, there's a lot more that we don't know. And obviously, they arrested 14 people. Those people are probably being interrogated as we speak. As you mentioned, France was all over it, providing intel. Nigeria has been promoted as the leading power within ECOWAS, which is interesting because Nigeria is also somewhat in a doghouse with Trump and those allegations of Christian persecutions. So it's almost, you can't help but thinking there's like a good cop, bad cop dynamic going on here, where Washington is threatening, and France is cajoling. But it's all like it's really this kind of basket of crabs, but it's likely to be going on for the foreseeable future. Yes, more and more of that.
Tell me, how does France maintain control over these former colonies? I am fascinated by that, because when Niger broke away, one of the things France had, like, these contracts on uranium where France was paying like 1% of the actual value or something like that, some insane amount of money.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, how on earth does this former colony keep control of these other countries? Well, you could take the AES out of it at this point, but Nigeria and some of these other countries of West Africa, especially ECOWAS itself, seems to still be under the thumb of France. I don't quite understand how it works. How does France maintain control?
Well, they maintain control. If our listeners are interested, you have to read, I forgot this guy's name. He was an anti-colonial Marxist philosopher, political philosopher.
Yeah.
Frantz Fanon. You need to read Frantz Fanon. White face, black mask. Everything is explained in it. And essentially, it's all about cultivating, most likely through Masonic lodges, branches in Africa, a class of compradors. And those guys will be tasked in administrating the country, the newly independent, officially independent country, in terms of economics is concerned, in a way that benefits the former colonial power. And the only way, or one of the most instrumental ways of doing that, and that has been going on for decades now, going back to the 1960s, is through the usage of the franc CFA. The franc CFA, which is this kind of made-up currency imposed on those former colonies, out of which it is impossible to enter into transactions of any kind. And so franc CFA is designed in a way to control indirectly through the money changing, framing the economic argument and the dynamic of exchanges and trade, the destiny of those countries. So in a way, there are more subtle change, but they're still change nonetheless. And a lot of countries like Cameroon, like Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, which just had elections October 25th, I think, which saw the re-election of Alassane Ouattara, who was the guy who deposed using French American support Laurent Gbagbo. Laurent Gbagbo was then railroaded into the ICC, where he faced basically non-corroborated charges and was relaxed, not acquitted because there was no trial, but at the instruction level, the judges realized that the file was empty. But it took 12 to 15 years. So he's pretty much out of it now. His wife is the one now who picked up the baton. But yeah, so this is how they do it. It's not unlike what we see in the EU when the Americans are using the euros and the European Commission as a prison out of which no one is supposed to escape. They impose a currency on an economy like France and or what we call the pigs country, essentially all the southern pourtour, France, Italy, Portugal, Spain. Some might throw Greece into the mix as well. They were coerced into adopting the euros when their economy was not suited for that. And so when once upon a time they had monetary flexibility, they could always devaluate their currency to stimulate growth and then generate revenues and then basically service the debt, and so doing, or at least the interest of the debt. It's the same system with the franc CFA. It's just a cut and paste essentially. The euros was designed for it. Was always defined and characterized as a Deutschmark on steroids. So if you don't manufacture anything, if you don't have an industrial base, you're going to be in the context of neoliberal policies, where it's always about the shareholders and increasing the dividends. If you need to basically cannibalize yourself and lay off thousands upon thousands of employees out of a company which on paper is doing somewhat very well, thank you very much, then over time you're going to become poorer and poorer. And franc CFA is the same thing. It's imposed on economies that are not suited for this. Essentially, they need to have monetary flexibility, but it's a carcan. It's like you used to wear those things and you had your head through it back in the days. Yeah, that no flexibility. You're stuck with that.
And okay, so effectively, certain people in the countries are reared to take on a French point of view, and then they have this kind of currency that is imposed on these governments, and this is the way they're able to maintain control at a distance on various governments that are in West Africa. Wow.
Using their proxies, their comprador associates in theater, yes. Like Ouattara, who studied in the US all his life. like Paul Biya, like Bongo in Gabon. Some of those guys were in place for decades. Mobutu was in charge also in RDC for up until 1997. He was in charge. So it was a different context. It was about the Cold War at the time. He was a reliable ally in trying to prevent Marxism from taking over his country. But it's the same mentality. Now today it's all about maintaining neoliberal hegemony versus multipolar horizontal relationships, peer to peer, equal to equal, which is what the Russians are, promoting in Africa in their uh,
Operations.
presence,
Yeah.
being presence in Africa. It's all
Oh,
about promoting development, promoting the building up of institutions, engaging in trade using local currency and not a currency imposed from somewhere in Brussels or Paris or Washington even. And in that sense, it's putting the economic lunar module on the rocket that initially only contained the political component, as harkens back to the 1960s when the Soviet Union was supporting, anti-colonial movements. Yeah. So that connects then with the Russia summit starting in 2019, the first one in Sochi, and then its more recent iteration in 2023, which saw a lot of economic initiatives being implemented. And we'll see, like next year, 2026 will be the next one. But it's moving at breathtaking space and speed, sorry. And
mhm.
in that sense, ECOWAS increasingly looks now like a relic, and a lot of countries are dealing with the same problems that those three breakaways dealt with, those frustrations, notwithstanding those election cycles, the inability to deal once and for all with the jihadist threat. But the idea is to never be in a position to deal with it in a definite way, right?
Yeah.
So France comes in and say we create the problem. They create the problem. They inject all those jihadis. So it's Africa al Nusra, as it were now. And France comes in and says, as they did in Mali for all those years leading up to the 2022 takeover by the junior officers there, because it's always a successful coup leading to emancipation always starts at the junior level officers, not the generals, but the captains, lieutenant, majors, no more than majors, not higher than majors. And but France was basically blowing hot and cold under François Hollande's tenure. Essentially, they sent this contingent there called the Barkhane in 2013, and basically they were never quite efficient in dealing with a problem that they imported on purpose to justify their presence there, and in so doing, keeping an eye and their ear on the ground as to who's plotting to change the order of things and killing it in the egg. This is what they do.
Wow. That is amazing. Before I let you go, what time is it? Okay, we have about 5 minutes. No, about 15, 10 minutes. The time is a little bit different, so it takes me a while to kind of wrap my head around it.
Mhm.
Apparently, one of your favorite people, Zelensky, was in London. He was having a conversation with many of the other leaders of these other countries. Merritt's, I don't remember if Merritt's was there, but obviously Cameron was there, Macron was there, etc. And they were patting him on the back, saying, "Hey, I know Trump has been saying bad things about you and about us, but don't feel bad. Keep the fight." Now, Trump has called for elections in Ukraine at this point. He is trying to, based on the reporting coming out of the U.S., forcing Zelensky to come to some kind of terms before Christmas. Before it was Thanksgiving, now it's Christmas. What do you make of this? I'm very curious on, as you're sitting in Moscow looking at this, what is Moscow thinking of this? Like, what is the Russian media thinking of this? What do you think of all of this as it falls out?
Well, I would say in a way it's like a clown show, to be sure, because we all know that Washington is the main protagonist in this whole mess. So, but we have to all pretend as if it's an external power, benevolent power coming in and operating, extending its auspices for peace, its peacemaker ability. But the catch is they don't have the means of their policy, because obviously at the administration level, the best thing they can send to Moscow is a business associate of Trump and his son-in-law, both of them who have no legitimacy to conduct negotiations. I mean, they can talk 5 hours all they want, but in the end, the Russians, they want to be facing a team of experienced professionals, most likely, obviously, from the State Department, or at least trained as such, who can start addressing the technicalities and the nitty-gritty of what would be required to address the root causes of the conflict. So at the same time, as you mentioned, we still have this completely absurd situation of a guy who has no legitimacy to even negotiate or even talk to anybody who's a player in this equation. Volodymyr Zelensky, the failed actor, who basically has outlived its expiration date, but that for whatever reason seems to be able to always, extract more time, when we know that in the end he's not his own man. So I don't understand what the Trump administration is doing here. If you need to get the guy whacked, and you need to pick off a few of those influential people like you did to help your buddy al-Shara in Idlib province, when some of the most radical on his flanks were getting ideas, then do it, for God's sake, and make it up like an accident. But it's going extremely slow. And if the idea, above and beyond the business aspect of things, is to salvage your control over both houses of Congress through the signing of an agreement that satisfies both sides, and a subsequent ratification at the congressional level, i.e. at the Senate, where your hold on this body is tenuous at best, you should hurry, because by the time we get into September next year, we'll be in the last straight line to the midterms. So this will be not the time to do it. Then before that, you have the summer vacation break, so that will not be the time. You have probably until late March, early April at the latest to submit a viable document to the Senate for ratification. And so that's not a lot of time. That's keeping in mind that as we speak, the situation on the ground is getting worse and worse. So time is not on your side as far as internal political calendar issues are concerned, but also in military terms, the longer you wait before you show substantive interest in doing it the right way, the more difficult it's going to be to convince somebody from state to go and negotiate in a position of inferiority. So it's
But see,
it's
I
a
mean,
cluster F
yeah,
situation.
I mean, but Trump doesn't trust the State Department.
No,
Meaning he's not sending Rubio because he doesn't trust Rubio to do it. He doesn't trust the State Department to do it.
Which actually opens up a whole new kind of worms, because it shows that we have a CEO, head of the executive branch, who's basically relying on people with whom he has no agreement on substantial issues. So what gives? It's really bizarre.
You are not the only person that said Zelensky has effectively outlasted his expiration date. And you are also not the only person that says Zelensky can either walk or get effectively a bullet. Basically, dude, you are in a proxy in a government that's utterly collapsing around you. And you can either call it a day, or you could stay and take your chances. And every day that you stay, effectively take your chances. What do you make of the corruption scandal? Because it seems like the corruption scandal is kind of a push, kind of a nod to Zelensky, like, hey, dude, this is getting closer and closer to you the longer that you stay in power.
It seems. No, I mean, joke aside, Yes, of course. I mean, it's the onion peeling strategy. So first they take away his wallet, then they take away his great eminence, his right hand man. Then they go after a substantial chunk of his majority, quote unquote, in Nevada.
Right.
But I think it's too little, too late in a way. This should have been done back in January, right after that first or February, right after that fiery meeting in the Oval Office. Then there and then there should have been no qualms, no doubt that we were dealing with someone who was not willing to play ball for whatever reason. Afterward, support of the Europeans, which support him like the rope supports the hanged person. But the fact is, yeah, that should have been a realization right there and then they should have proceeded with the FBI and the NABU and the SAPO and get all this going. But we only see this now of almost a full year into the administration. And keep in mind, even if we were to get an election going, it takes time to set up. You need to introduce the candidate. You need to allow those who throw their hats into the ring to campaign on a platform. So this would take about 3 months. So best case scenario, we have an election in March. And we come with someone who might not, it's not 100% guaranteed, satisfy the Russians as to the mindset that, he or she will adopt in dealing with, peace negotiation. So all this is a kabuki theater. They should just assume that it's, as I said in my book, it's external management. So Ukraine is a non-subject. It's a non-actor. It's country 404. It's a non-entity at this point, so just own it. But they cannot do this for political reason, because then it would mean that, as everybody has said, that since 2014 they basically are running the country, and they're trying to maintain the pretense that Ukraine is a independent and sovereign country, which we all know is
It's not.
far from being the case. So they are essentially stuck in a situation of their own doing that is so riddled with internal contradiction, not only in the narrative, but in the optics and in the way out that would be required. That I'm not really too optimistic that that window of somewhat a goodwill between Moscow and Washington will lead to concrete results.
Arnaud, great breakdown. Honestly, on both subjects. Thank you for this. Arnaud Develay, he's an author, political analyst, international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and the Fracturing of America's Political Consensus. You have a good rest of your day, man. Thank you for this. Be safe, okay?
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Shout out to Arnaud. Great breakdown. Professor Marandi is coming up next. And it is going to take me just a moment to nail down what needs to be done in order to make this work. Let's join. And yes, admit. Perfect. Professor, you are live. Let me bring you on to the main screen. How you doing today? You doing all right? Give me 1 second. I am doing well. I'm doing better that you're joining me. Let me bring you onto the main screen so everybody can see you. And come on. There we are. All right. And let's fill that screen. And perfect. How you doing? You doing okay today? You having a good day so far?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. And just for the audience, Professor Marandi, he is a professor of English literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. I have to start this off with the Nadi strategy and how that relates to Iran, meaning how is Iran seeing this strategy? Do you see it as entrenchment or retrenchment? Do you see it as, well, I'll just give it to you. Give me your thoughts on this before we move on to other subjects.
well, for the time being, it's a piece of paper. And until the United States changes its policy to show that it's moving in the direction that it claims to be pursuing in this document, then until then we really can't take it that seriously. It is an admission, I think, of sorts, that the United States is not the global hegemon that it used to be, as the likes of Wolfowitz were pursuing. It's an admission that the United States has to accommodate other major players, especially the Chinese, but also the Russians. Its attitude towards Europe, I think, is very clearly Trumpian under the circumstances. And its hope to sort of decrease its presence or its footprint in West Asia, our region, is something that we've been hearing since the time of Obama, the pivot to Asia that Obama spoke of and Clinton spoke of, which never materialized. The United States' presence in our region is still very clear and not welcome.
Yeah.
Its attitude towards Latin America is not good news for Venezuela, for Cuba, for Nicaragua, and for others. But again, a country which has 900 military bases spread out across the world, if it's going to really bring about any change, then we're going to be hearing news of many of those bases being shut down. And I just don't see that happening at the moment.
Yeah.
So for the time being, it's a wish list, but I'm not sure that any of it will really materialize.
There was a Joint Chiefs chairman who made the point of saying, in a nutshell, that the goal is to effectively utilize other countries to effectively take over the responsibilities of the United States. I'm paraphrasing, but to create all sorts of threats using other countries. So against China, for example, Philippines, South Korea, Japan, against Russia, to utilize Europe and to get Europe to be donating more money in regard to their military. And I would imagine for Iran to create regional, either instability or let's say countries in the region to go after Iran. Now, it doesn't seem like the attack on Iran is still on. It seems like Israel has gotten a bit circumspect on this particular issue. But it seems that Trump is trying to create some kind of context to surround, or at the very least to isolate Iran. Do you see this happening? And do you think this is even possible at this point, given the connections that Iran has made around the world?
Well, all of this is old news. The United States has been trying to use its allies or proxies against China, against Russia. That's what they've been doing in the South China Sea.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That's what we've been seeing in Taiwan for, since before I was born. And of course, the European. The only thing actually in this document, which I think may actually materialize, is the European Union's decline. And that, I think, is partially because the European Union foolishly went into this war with U.S. encouragement, and now under a new president, that the policy has changed, but they continue to rush forward like the Light Brigade. And that is going to possibly destroy the European Union, or at least change it in ways which make it, in its current form, unsustainable. Mm-hmm. That I think is possible, but that is something that the Trump faction in the United States would like to see. Other than that, I just, they would definitely like to mobilize countries in the region against Iran. It's more difficult to do that now because countries are more fearful of the Israeli regime than they were before.
Yeah.
The bombing of Qatar was, despite the fact that the United States, I continue to believe that the United States was well informed about the plan to attack Qatar, and they allowed it to happen. It would have been just too dangerous if it was not informed beforehand. But after that, the mood changed, and Arab countries are more fearful of this rogue regime. And the rise of BRICS, the rise of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, that has enhanced Iran. That is, if you look back, Iran was far more isolated in the previous decade.
Yes.
And more or less for 2 decades, because countries like China were still on the rise, and they were not confident enough about standing up to the United States. The same was true with the Russians. It was basically Iran that was the axis of evil. So all the focus was on Iran, or most of the focus was on Iran, and countries like China and Russia kept their distance because they didn't want to get into trouble with the United States. But then as the United States declined because of its perpetual wars in the region, and Iran had a lot to do with the United States being forced to leave the region, its decline coinciding with the rise of these alternative powers, in BRICS, but China and Russia in particular, that pushed U.S. attention. U.S. attention began to, the United States increasingly began to focus on Russia and China, and that gave it less time to focus on Iran. And China and Russia and Iran also moved closer to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, after the war, the 12-day war, I think that this has even gone further, in particular with China, because the Chinese are deeply concerned about what the United States is attempting to do in West Asia and in Latin America. So today, Iran is far less isolated than it was in years past, and much less focus is put on Iran by the United States because it's forced to spread out its troops and have focus on Venezuela, China, and Russia, and so on. So we're living in a different world. So I don't think isolating Iran, and I think the same is true with all these countries. It's going to be more difficult for the United States to isolate Russia. Russia's winning the war.
Mm-hmm.
And this war, by the way, despite it being a disastrous war, a horrible war with all these deaths, it has enhanced Iran's power because the West has been fighting against Russia, weakening itself, tiring itself out, and that has provided just like the war in Iraq, just like the war in Afghanistan, just like all the other foolish wars that it has engaged in. The war in Ukraine has further weakened the West, and it has allowed countries like BRICS, like Iran, to be able to strengthen and consolidate their positions.
Has there been a change because you mentioned this, which is why I'm bringing this up, that the countries in the region, let's say the Gulf states, for example, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, etc., those countries were effectively, as it's been called, quisling governments. I would go so far as to say even puppets of Western power, especially the United States. After the attack on Doha, has there been a change in policy in these countries? Or do you see a change in policy in regards to the United States in these countries?
Well, they buy more U.S. weapons to protect themselves against the Israeli regime. So how does
that work?
Yeah. You give more money to the mafia don, and you get weapons that really you cannot use to protect yourself against him or the Israeli regime. I mean, no one knows more about U.S. weapons than the Americans and the Israelis. So if they get F-35s, it's going to be a sort of a version that the Israeli regime can deal with. Just like in the past, this is what's been going on for decades. So if you recall back in the day, you're younger than me, but back decades ago, the Saudis wanted to purchase F-15s, and there was a lot of talk in Israel about this being a threat to Israel. So they gave them I think they had smaller capability. They could carry less
plane.
fuel.
Yeah.
And they were that, they were a version that was much less advanced than the Israeli version. The same would be true with any F-35 that they would at some point perhaps be able to obtain. So they'll continue to be paying the Americans, and they will continue to be utterly vulnerable. The Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris, they are bound to the United States. We saw just a couple of days ago when Tucker Carlson interviewed the Qatari prime minister, he admitted something which we all knew, that they were hosting the Hamas because the Americans and the Israelis wanted it.
Yes.
Qatar obeys the United States. And why did they do this? It was 13 years ago, I think. That was during the beginning of the dirty war in Syria, when regional countries, at the behest of the United States, began to destroy Syria and kill hundreds of thousands of people. The West likes to say the Syrian government did it, but they did it. They caused the dirty war. So Qatar, at that time, they wanted to separate Hamas, the political wing of Hamas, because the military wing was different from the political wing, its position on Syria and on the resistance. But they wanted to separate the political wing from Syria. And so the United States and the Israelis wanted Hamas, the political wing of Hamas, to go to Qatar. And that created a rift in the resistance, which benefited the Israeli regime a great deal. So Qatar is very much in the American camp. You would call it a puppet. I can't argue with that. But they dislike each other. Qatar and Turkey are in one camp. The Saudis and the Emiratis are sort of in another camp, even though they have their own differences. But they're all bound to the United States. After the Qatari airstrikes, there has been a shift. But when you're bound to the United States, that shift is not going to be enormous. I mean, if they were truly independent countries, they would start negotiating with Iran, with the Russians, with the Chinese. They wouldn't put all their eggs in the American basket, but they haven't really shifted that much.
Speaking of that, there was the Beijing Agreement. I think this was on December 9th, where Saudi Arabia, China, and Iran were in additional negotiations. What is this about? I mean, because obviously there's a complication here with Saudi Arabia's, let's say, relationship with the United States, but Saudi Arabia is also, I guess, trying to make a relationship with Iran, with China as an intermediary between these countries.
It's not really a big deal. I think, I haven't been following it, but I think that these negotiations were held in Tehran.
Mm-hmm.
And they are a continuation of the negotiations and the agreement that happened in China, in Beijing, where Iran and Saudi Arabia reestablished ties. Iran is trying to improve ties with Saudi Arabia, and the Saudis, to a point, can. But at the end of the day, as I said, a NATO country like Turkey, countries in the Persian Gulf which are bound to the United States, they can only go so far in standing against U.S. policy, and thus their relations with Iran can only improve so much. It's just like with regards to the Israeli regime, none of these countries broke off diplomatic ties. Those that had diplomatic ties, none of these countries broke off economic ties, direct or indirect. The imports, exports, gas exports to Egypt, or imports from Turkey, or from Baku through Turkey, all of these continued. So these countries are still bound to the United States. So that's why I think that it's even though they are concerned and they feel that the Israeli regime is the threat, the real threat, something which their populations have always believed, by the way. When these governments across the region constantly said Iran is the threat, is the major threat to our existence, in polls that would be regularly carried out by Western institutions in these countries in the Persian Gulf region and beyond, the people on the street said, no, Israel is the primary threat. And so now these governments are saying what their populations have always been saying. So, this does bring about some change, but how much change? It's, at the end of the day, after the airstrikes, the first thing that the Qatari leaders did was to fly to Washington.
Yeah. One of the other things that's taking place in the Middle East has to do with Lebanon. There seems to be a huge amount of pressure being applied to Lebanon to try to, quote, demilitarize Hamas, effectively to take away Hezbollah's weapons. Well, they're trying to do the same thing in Gaza also, but just for the sake of Lebanon. Yeah, they're trying to effectively take away Hezbollah's weapons. This is massively unpopular, even among people who are not necessarily super supportive of Hezbollah in this case. And, there's also people in the region are worried about attacks from basically jihadists coming out of Syria, for example. Basically, Lebanon feels surrounded. Give me your take on this. I mean, do you think this is a real danger in this case? Is this something that you believe is going to take place?
Yeah, well, that was the objective of the dirty war in Syria in 2011. That was what the plan all along. And so those people who were supporting this so-called blessed revolution in Syria, they knew that they were in bed with the CIA and Mossad and all the intelligence agencies of these, as you would call it, puppet regimes. And this is one of the extraordinary things about some so-called pro-Palestinians who are also supporting the dirty war in Syria, because they were working in parallel with the major powers, the NATO and Israel, whose project was to undermine the resistance. And getting in bed with the CIA and NATO and for a decade and a half to destroy a country is not going to lead to good results. And we were saying all along that if the likes of Jolani come to power, they will be working with the CIA. Lo and behold, we see him in his love fest with Petraeus. He will be in bed with CENTCOM. He plays basketball with it. But he went into the White House and Trump sprayed him with Trumpian perfume. And just recently, CENTCOM, thanked them for blocking weapons from getting to Hezbollah. So that was the plan all along. That's why they brought down Syria. For Iran, and this offends and I've been saying this for many years, and this offends some of those who were supporting the previous Syrian government. For Iran, the previous Syrian government was by no means ideal, and Iran's support for it was not even 1/100th of 1% for sectarian reasons. And those people who opposed the resistance always knew that. They always knew that. They knew that Iran was supporting Syria because Syria was facilitating Iran's support for the resistance, both in Palestine and in Lebanon. And that's why the United States and the Israeli regime targeted Syria. And Iran knew that if the Americans succeeded in overthrowing the Syrian government, what would come to power would be worse.
Yeah.
Nothing good would come out of it. And that's exactly what happened. And Iran, knew that Erdogan was supporting ISIS and Al-Qaeda and these intelligence agencies that are countries that are puppets of the United States, that they were funding this. You know that Serena Sheem, for example, she was reporting from the border between Turkey and Syria how ISIS was being brought into Syria and how weapons were being brought into Syria through World Food Organization trucks. And then she was murdered. The Turkish intelligence said that she was carrying out espionage. She went on live TV, press TV, to say, that's what they're saying. I'm not doing espionage. I'm just a reporter. And then she was killed hours later. I mean, no one believes that it was an accident. So that, that was the story. So right now, what is happening is that after the fall of Syria, the regime, the ISIS and Al-Qaeda regime bound to the West, they are putting pressure on Lebanon. The prime minister of Lebanon, installed by the West, is putting pressure on the resistance. And so is the Israeli regime. So Hezbollah is sort of surrounded by this alliance of ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Zionism and the liberal pro-Western leaders in Lebanon. That is, a crude way of putting it, I guess.
Is Iran still able to help the resistance given the fall of Syria?
Oh, yes, without a doubt. Iran will continue to support the axis of resistance. Hezbollah is prepared for war if the Israeli regime pushes the region in that direction. And Iran will continue to support Hamas in Gaza. Someone sent me a clip of someone saying that Iran is not supporting Hamas or Palestinian Islamic Jihad. I mean, let's be clear. There's no way that, despite the heroic defense of Gaza, that the people who are completely surrounded would be able to stand for over 2 years without some sort of, things getting in through tunnels and through, other means. So Iran has been doing that. Iran has been supporting all of the resistance groups, and of course Yemen and so on. So yes, Iran continues to do that.
There was an article that came out in Tassim News today, and I'm trying to get the general's name. So this was an Iranian spokesman. Spokesman for Iran armed forces. And he pointed out, he said, Iran is stronger today than it was in the 12-day war. That basically the 12-day war strengthened Iran. It didn't weaken Iran in the way that some in the West may anticipate. Is that true?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct, because Iran now knows the capabilities of the Israeli regime. It knows what its own shortcomings are. It knows what its strengths are. The Israeli regime gave it its best shot because it was a regime change operation. So they used everything, all of their capabilities. And the Iranians discovered their own weaknesses, their strengths, the strength and weaknesses of the Israeli regime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, remember, during the last few days of the war, the Iranians were hitting the Israelis harder and harder, yet they were using less and less missiles.
Yes.
Why was that the case? Because they knew how to get through. And the Israelis and the Americans, the Americans were doing the heavy duty work. They were the ones who were, the real air defenses were the American air defenses, not the Israeli defenses. Without the Americans, the Israelis would have not been able to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But after a few days, the Iranians discovered what sort of weaknesses they had. They exploited them. And the Iranians began to deal with their own air defenses, their own internal, the weaknesses. So yes, if a war breaks out, or if the Israeli regime again carries out a blitzkrieg attack on Iran today, the armed forces and the government and the state, they're much more prepared than they were back then.
I'm curious also, what is the relationship between Iran and the current Syrian government? I mean, there are a lot of people in the Middle East who take issue with, let me explain it this way. Because I cover all sorts of different parts of the globe. Oftentimes, different parts of the globe have a different point of view on other parts of the globe, which creates friction on my channel sometimes. There is a point of view that Russia and China should have done more in the context of the Middle East, and especially along this way of, let's say, not breaking off diplomatic ties with Israel. And a lot of people take issue with Russia's relationship with the current Syrian government that's in play now. What is your take on that? I mean, and this question is somewhat awkward and inelegantly put, but I hope you get the spirit of the question. What is the relationship between Syria and Iran currently? And does Iran take issue with Russia's relationship with this government?
Well, I'm sure that the Iranians are not thrilled by by Russian policy towards Syria, but the Iranians at the moment, they have refused to engage with the government in Damascus. The government in Damascus has sent messages through different means to Iran, including the Russians.
Yeah.
But the Iranians still are not interested in any form of engagement until the Syrian, the government in Damascus behaves in an altogether different manner. But from what Iran sees, the situation in Syria is getting worse. The economic situation is getting worse. All the promises turned out to be empty promises, as we predicted. And the sort of aid that Iran was giving, no one is giving that sort of aid to Syria now. The aid that Russia was giving, no one is giving that sort of aid to Syria now. And of course, the government, the country is fragmented, because by bringing in the most extreme elements of the civil war, what the Americans succeed and the Israelis succeeded in doing is fragmenting and is balkanizing the country.
Yes.
Because when Al Qaeda comes to power, then all the minorities are, look inward. They move away. So the Kurds, the Druze, the Christians, the Alawites, all of them, none of them can work with these people, because these people believe that anyone who does not think like them is. It's ironic how friendly they can be with the head of CENTCOM and the former head of the CIA and Trump, but they are intolerant of
people.
Alawite and Druze and Kurds in the land. So basically, the country is balkanized. The government really controls very little of the entire country. For now, the Iranians don't feel that there's any reason why they should engage. Iran believes that Syria, the territorial integrity must be preserved, and that the country must not fall apart, and that Iran supports any move to expel the Israelis, but the government in Damascus does not feel the need to do anything about the Israeli occupation of the south. And of course, Erdogan has done nothing about it either, as expected.
Yeah. I mean, but those edges are rubbing closer together between Erdogan and Israel. Like, this doesn't seem like a happy marriage, despite the fact that Erdogan helped bring.
Well, the problem is that Erdogan wants to build his mini Ottoman Empire, and which is not going to work. But what he's done effectively is through his cooperation with the Israelis and the Americans. He has, of course, weakened the resistance. He's removed a defense wall between himself and Israel. And if there's any conflict between the Israeli regime and Turkey or Turkey, does anyone think that the United States will side with Turkey or Turkey?
No.
Does anyone think that if the United States tells Qatar to stop funding Erdogan under such circumstances, that Qatar will fund or support Turkey? Of course not.
Yeah.
So instead of working and collaborating with the resistance, he worked in collaboration with the Israelis, and now he's removed a wall of defense that benefited his country. If there is a clash between Turkey and the Israeli regime, there's no doubt that Turkey does not have the capabilities that Iran has, the missile capabilities, and the United States will not allow it as a part of NATO to have the sort of capabilities that the Israeli regime has. So obviously, the Israelis will have the upper hand in any such battle.
Professor, you always have my appreciation for joining me. You absolutely do. Thank you for this. Professor Mohammed.
It's always an honor, Jamal.
Well, thank you, man. Professor Mohammed Marandi. He's professor of English literature and Oriental. I can't speak. He's a professor of English literature and Orientalism at the University of Tehran. Professor, you have a damn good rest of your night. Be safe, okay?
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Professor Marandi, shout out to him. If I can close this. There we are. Yeah, shout out to Professor Marandi. He has my thanks for joining me. We have come to the end. I hope it was illuminating. I hope we all learned something in all of this going on today. Professor has my thanks. We have a super chat, Earthling. Well, thank you, Earthling. Thank you. I appreciate that. By the way, like, share, subscribe. You can always do so. You can support this content, PayPal, Patreon, super chat, memberships, buy me a coffee. All of these things help the content. All of these things allow this show to keep ticking along. I want to thank all of my guests, Professor Wilmer Leon, Arnaud Develay, Ted Rall, and of course, Professor Mohammed Marandi. We've come to the end. We have come to the end. By the way, I will be leaving here on Saturday. I will be leaving here on Saturday. So when you see me on Monday, it will be a different location. I need to clean this place up, but I still should be on Friday. Friday, we still should have a show. But nevertheless, you will see me in a different location on Monday. I will be at that location for a month. I am thinking about visiting Lebanon, so there's that. But after that, I will be in a more stable location for a much longer period of time. So it wouldn't be this kind of constant place to place to place. Not to mention being here has kind of drained my powers to some degree. But I want to thank all of you. Super sticker. We have a super sticker. What's this from? James Kelman. Well, thank you, James Kelman. Thank you, James Kelman. You have my appreciation. You have my deepest appreciation. All right. I want to thank all of you for joining me. I want you all to be safe. Be kind to the degree that you can be kind. Go to Russia and join RT. Believe it or not, that's illegal. That's illegal. That is not allowed under U.S. law. If you remember, part of the rationale that they used to shut down the radio station and the TV station in the United States wasn't to go after the companies directly. They went after the parent companies and effectively made them illegal to participate in. It's how they were going after Ritter, for that matter, the FARA laws and stuff like that, that they were effectively using when they were prosecuting Ritter for what ostensibly is breaking the law. Yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that. Unless, or better put, you can do it, but you can't come back. You can do it, but you can't come back. You have to fully commit. Yes, and if you notice, Rick Sanchez lives in Russia. He lives there. He's not back in the States. He's not traveling back to the States. He's not traveling back to the States. So, like I said, you can do it. You can take that trip, but you can't come back. Yes, but that was before the laws changed. Fiorella did it, but she's not doing it now, right? She's not part of RTO Sputnik now. Because, I mean, even Rachel Blevins went, but she's not there now. She's not there now. Yeah, this was before the laws changed. They were looking for correspondence. And you have many Americans that went over in order to live there for a period of time. But at the point where the laws changed, that was it. at the point where they went after the parent companies. If you're working at those parent companies as an American, you're breaking the law. Again, you can do it. You just can't come back, which is why Rick is living in Moscow right now. So there is that. There is that. Jude Bela. Jude Bela. I don't know who that is, but I will look him up. Yeah, we'll look him up. The reason I put Arnaud on this is because Arnaud is French. Scott Ritter went over there. Look, you can visit. There's nothing stopping you from visiting Russia. Nothing at all. I would love to go to Russia to visit. That would be a fantastic trip. I mean, Garland went. As you point out, Larry Johnson went. But do they work for Sputnik or RT? Do they? And of course, the answer is no. And I know this as a flat fact because they shut down the radio station that I worked. If Ritter wants to break the law, Ritter can move to Russia and live that life. If Larry Johnson wants to break the law, he can move to Russia, work at RT and Sputnik, and live that life. You can do it. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying you cannot come back to the U.S. without being prosecuted. If you do it, it is the reason why there is no RT and Sputnik in America as we speak. Just saying. Then you can move in with Mark Sloboda. I don't know if Mark Sloboda likes me like that, to be honest. I like Mark. I always feel like it's, we used to have two dogs, my wife and I, my ex-wife, Pitsu and Apollo. Apollo was a younger dog, bigger than Pitsu, very energetic, basically a puppy. Pitsu was much older, even though Pitsu was smaller. Pitsu was a bit of an asshole, to be honest. Apollo loved Pitsu, loved him completely. And Pitsu couldn't be bothered. Now, if they were tired, yes, they would lay together. They would hang out together, all of this other stuff. But Pitsu was like, oh, God, why did you get another dog? That's kind of how it feels. That's kind of how it feels. I think Mark is cool as hell. I love Mark to death. But I don't know. I don't get the sense that he is that over the moon about me, per se. But that just could be my thinking of stuff. Yeah. One day he did tell me, he was like, hey, you can get I have an outhouse that you can live in or something like that. No. See, the thing is, I wouldn't want to go somewhere where I can't come back to the States. It's just that I want the option. Always want the option. And, you have family back home. I suppose the family can come visit you, but mom didn't even come to my wedding. Lord knows she's not getting on a flight to Moscow for 30 hours. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. All right. I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. I want to thank all of you for joining me. You can support this content. PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, Buy Me a Coffee. All of these things help the show and helps the show keep ticking along. Memberships also help. Patreon, I think I said Patreon. I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning. You be safe. Be kind to the degree that you can be kind. Are you getting married, Jamal? Oh, fuck no. No, I was married. I got divorced, a year ago? Yeah, I think it was a year ago. You all have a fantastic rest of your day. Be safe, all.